Welcome back to Talking Politics. Today I'm with the Conservative Ethics Critic, which is enormously pertinent for reasons I think you'll soon find out. And that's Michael Barrett. Thank you so much for coming on. I really do appreciate it.
Yeah, it's a pleasure. Thanks for having me.
So a few days ago, you sent a letter to the Ethics Commissioner asking him to investigate a $900 million deal, effectively, between the Trudeau government and the We charity. Now, I know that sort of that brushes aside quite a lot of the detail, but what were the issues that you found with this particular policy?
Well, when we look at the relationship between the Liberal Party of Canada and Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, his family, and this organization, it's problematic when, through the lens of the Conflict of Interest Act, you have a Prime Minister who I've asked the Ethics Commissioner to investigate and to verify if the Prime Minister did in fact recuse himself from the discussions around and the decision to award this contract to this organization with which he has very close ties. The principals of this organization have donated to Justin Trudeau's electoral campaigns. We know that Justin Trudeau himself, as well as his wife and his mother, all work in some capacity or have with this organization. And so that in and of itself is problematic. Also, we have the claim made by the Trudeau Liberals that this organization is the only one that can deliver this $900 million program, $912 million, I think. And he's benched the public service, Canada's professional public service, which in fact has programs specifically designed to help students, like the Canada Summer Job Program. So this type of program is exactly what Canada's public service is set up to deliver on. And so when we have the PM say that not only are they not qualified, no other charitable organization in the country is, that also giving that special treatment, that preferential treatment to a specific organization is potentially a violation of the Act as well.
Right, so it's multifaceted then. So
absolutely.
We're looking at a few things. Firstly, whether his family, or I suppose the connection between his family and the founders and just people within the organization, may have given them a better deal. Secondly, and here's what I wanted to ask you about, whether it had to do anything with the PMO. So one of the founders admitted, it seems, in a National Post exclusive, that this call came from the PMO rather than from the bureaucracy. Right. What's the significance of that?
Well, when it kind of points to one of the issues that I raised, and had this not been a situation or a contract that was being stick handled by PM Trudeau and his team, it would be usual for the public service, a mid-level manager, to contact this organization and let them know that they've been awarded this contract. But instead, one of the principals of the organization, excitedly announced to folks that it was in fact the PMO who contacted him, to make them aware. And once there was the spotlight of the national media and the official opposition on the issue, conveniently, the founder said, "Oh, I misspoke." And it was just a bureaucrat that I heard from, and I think that it would be unusual for someone of that stature to be confusing a call from the public service with a call from the Office of the Prime Minister of Canada.
Yes, and the final point, which I think you asked the Ethics Commission about, and as you brought up, was whether someone within the Canadian bureaucracy would have been able to handle this job, a civil servant or a group of civil servants, presumably. Do you think that's feasible? As you said, that there are people whose job it is to administer jobs like this. Do you think it's and again, I suppose you're asking the Ethics Commission this, but how realistic is it that the We Charity are the only organisation in Canada who can facilitate this programme?
Well, I think that it's a ridiculous claim. To be plain, the federal public service already delivers on a host of programs. Just this year, we're Canada's on track to run what's probably closing in on a $300 billion deficit for this year, and those expenditures are all related to COVID. All of those expenditures are going to be, almost all of them are going to be handled exclusively by Canada's public service and the departments. So to just say that this particular nearly $1 billion contract could only be handled by this group, and this group happens to also have very close ties to the Prime Minister himself, his family, and the Liberal Party, raises a ton of red flags. And not the least of which in those red flags is that representatives from Canada's public service have said, we find it offensive that you've said we can't handle this contract. Of course we can. That's what we do.
Yeah, it's bizarre. It's certainly, it smells, I think. But what are the implications of this? If he is found guilty, or if he is discovered to have broken another ethics violation, making it his third violation, what happens to the Trudeau government? Do you think it is possible for them to stay in government after that?
Well, some people have said that because the penalties for breaking the act are so light that it's there's no real disincentive for the government. Now, I contend that there should be a review of the act, and that there should be real penalties. When we're paying ministers of the Crown $250,000 a year, when we're paying the Prime Minister in excess of $300,000 a year, there should be real financial penalties, 5-figure penalties when they're found to have broken the act. But I do think the 2019 election, that the Liberals paid an electoral price specifically for the finding of guilt against the Prime Minister in the SNC-Lavalin scandal. And history is on the side of first-term majority governments to form a second majority government. Now, full credit to my colleagues and the team, the Conservative team, who helped us elect 121 Conservatives, Canada's largest opposition in history, and winning the popular vote. But I also think that some credit goes to Canadian voters. They put Justin Trudeau on notice. They put him on a shorter leash, and they expected better behavior from him in his first term, and they expect it going forward. So I think that if there's a finding of guilt, that there will be a reckoning for the Trudeau Liberals.
Yeah. Could you illuminate a bit for me the process? So you've written to the Ethics Commission now. He's accepted your proposal. What does he do now, and what exactly is the time frame?
So the time frame isn't set. I would expect inside 6 months that we would have a result. Now, one of the challenges that we're going to see, I think, and I don't want to presuppose the outcome of the Commissioner's report, but if history is any indicator, we'll see that one of the issues with respect to my contention that the Prime Minister did not recuse himself from cabinet discussions on the subject, the government will almost certainly invoke, the Prime Minister will almost certainly invoke cabinet confidence as a reason for not being able to disclose the full details to the commissioners. Just like in the SNC-Lavalin scandal, the report that was titled the Trudeau Report 2, because as you said, that was his second, and now we're into his third potential ethics violation. There were, I believe, 9 witnesses who the commissioner had asked to meet with, and they were not made available. They were shielded from the investigation, and so a fulsome report is difficult for the commissioner to get at, and that's also a problem when we're trying to maintain the confidence that Canadians have in their public institutions. When we have the executive branch, really obstructing an investigation. So I think that there'll be a request for production of documents. That'll be a first step. There'll be a request for statements from all involved. And once the commissioners receive those, would further request interviews with people that come up as a product of his investigation, and then he prepares his report, and then it's tabled in the House.
Right. Now, final question, because I know I can't keep you for too long. What do you think it says about a government who repeatedly breaks ethics, who repeatedly violates ethics, protocol, all the rest of it? You know, we've seen Aga Khan, which I think was perhaps more revealing than SNC Lavalin, despite the enormous amount of media coverage around this. What does it say about Justin Trudeau?
Well, I think it speaks to the culture in the PMO. We've seen from that government, the ethics violations aren't limited just to Trudeau's trip to Billionaire Island or his involvement in the SNC Lavalin scandal. We had the fisheries minister awarding lucrative contracts to family members. We'll call that clam scam. We had the finance minister who just happened to forget that he had a French villa, which is completely understandable. I know for most Canadians, that they would forget about overseas villas often. And we've had even as recently as this spring, following the election, the require for members to disclose their financial dealings to the commissioner under the code and not the act. A pile of Liberals, including the Prime Minister himself, failed to meet the disclosure deadline. And there's extensions available, but they're just not. They believe that there are two sets of rules, one for the governing and one for those they govern. Mm-hmm. And I think it speaks to a type of arrogance that is contrary to what they promised in their run up to the 2015 election. And I think really it grades on and wears on Canadians, and frankly, Canadians deserve better.
Perfect. Michael, thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
It's a pleasure. Thanks for having me on.